Hi guys. So for my video today, my third collective video, I'm going to be talking about what I think it is to be a whore and why I wish I was one. I'm going to be quoting things from a book called Cunt, and it's a really good read. So I'm going to start by talking about what I think it is to be a world cunt. In our present mode of collective consciousness, a whore is simply a person who exchanges sex for financial resources. Off to a good start. I accept this to be true, but only if it's recognized as one part of a much broader cultural financial order that women participate in for survival. Bear with me. There is no difference between a woman who marries a very powerful man because it is the only way she is guaranteed a place in society, and a streetwalker who's never known the illusion of a guarantee. Some women opt to be whores because procuring semen from men's bodies in a bona fide way to make a living in society where we are viewed as highly expendable citizens. Mrs. Streetwalker exchanges womanly vials for subsistence. Some women, such as the late Princess Diana, who once referred to herself as the highest paid prostitute in the world, don't actually opt to be whores, but realize nonetheless that that's exactly what we are. Mrs. Powerwife exchanges womanly vials for a fancy house in the hills. In this way of thinking, the issue is class rather than whoredom. Hugh Grant and Eddie Murphy could lecture on this subject. Now, I think the best way to start this off is by saying what it is to be a whore is merely someone who exchanges their substance for what they want in return, whether that be a fancy house in the hills or whether that be money to send your kid to school. So if we think about it this way, we're all whores. Bankers are whores. They exchange their skills in order for subsistence. Teachers are whores. They're able to lecture and educate on something that they're knowledgeable about in order for subsistence. So on the topic of teachers, I would like to talk about Jesus and Mary Magdalene, if I could have a moment of your time to talk about the Lord today. Mary Magdalene was a whore, and Jesus dug her because she taught him the most sacred thing a man can ever hope to learn in his lifetime: how to fuck. Stud that he was, Jesus knew to humble himself to his woman. I imagine that the sex was spectacular. Now let's interpret the notion of Jesus visiting a whore in a cunt-loving way. Let's pretend Jesus and his apostle frat brothers didn't visit Mary Magdalene after a hard night tossing off 40 ounces and tipping cows in the Holy Land. From all the things that I've heard about Jesus, he sounds like a pretty decent sort. He looks nice in most of his pictures. I mean, you can tell Adolf Hitler and George Washington were dickheads just by looking at them. But looking at Jesus, he seems cool. By and large, Jesus evidently had a lot of love and compassion swimming around in his heart. He had a pretty huge impact in certain parts of the world, yet left when he was only 32. You gotta figure Jesus didn't waste a lot of time dinking around. But even if he did dink around, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would take an impersonal toss in the hay for a budgeted degree of arousal. I seriously doubt that Jesus perceived Mary Magdalene as anything less than an esteemed teacher. In Jesus' time, whores were still prophets of sexual power. They taught people that physical body is a conduct of energy, and if Jesus was able to manifest the love in his heart in all of the physical actions the Bible alleges, Mary Magdalene was certainly one of the people in his life responsible for helping him figure out how to do it. So, if we think about things this way, if you know anything about this topic, or you've done any research in any kind of art history class or general history class, or even if you know very much about the Bible, you'll know that being a whore was the best thing you could be. It meant that you were respected, and you knew a trade that people wished that they knew. You knew how to conduct a positive energy in your life, and you knew how to reach God through the highest point of the orgasm. It was the closest way that you could be to him, and if you've even read the Da Vinci Code, you understand that to be true. So why is it that we look at Mary Magdalene like this whore that, you know, she just did terrible things and blah, 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 and the Bible, and the Bible, and the Bible, but Jesus seemed to dig her, and you know, Jesus is always right? Especially if you're in the South. So I think that she was a respected teacher, and I think that being a whore just means that you can teach things people that they wish that they knew. Kind of like being a math teacher. Nobody knows how to do that except for you. You just pretend. It's a lot like being a whore and buying a prostitute, if you ask me. So now that we've conquered the topic in just under 5 minutes, that whores are teachers, and they're people too, just like your dad the banker, your mom the nurse. They're exchanging their skills for substance of a sort. So I think that that's a good way to look at things, just to start us off. Whores are people. Whores were in the business back before the Red Sea ever thought about parting. Whores have no labor unions, no health insurance, no retirement fund, no unemployment insurance, and no legal rights. Since the chain is only as strong as its weakest link, the non-existent rights and freedoms of women who understand the power of cons conceivably more than any other group of women in our society bespeaks the constitution of the chain that we ladies are dealing with here. It is a mere coincidence that women so specifically physically associated with cons have no rights in this culture. You can get out. So, why is it that there have been an abundance of women in history, especially in recent history, who happen to have this profession, this day job, or this night job of being a whore? Not only do they get no respect, but they get no help. And by help, I mean women are raped, 1 in 6 women in the United States. Men are raped. It's not as common, but it does happen. So why can't whores be raped? Just because we're offering our services to you in exchange for money doesn't mean that you can take something from us that we don't consent to. Much like a bank teller at the bank being robbed. You're offering to give the money away, but if you get robbed, it's not your fault, is it? Think about it that way. You're offering to perform a service for someone in exchange for money, but that doesn't mean that they can't take that service from you by force. I understand that whores are putting themselves in a tricky situation, being on the streets, and some of them do it in a safer way with newspaper ads, and some of them are high-end with their little black books, but we do understand that they're putting themselves at risk. You're putting yourself at risk being a bank teller, dealing with money all day. I mean, you have to understand that some guy with a gun who's short on his rent, he can just come take what he wants because you're offering it, aren't you? You should really think about things. You know, get your life together, Mr. Bank Teller. So, let's keep reading. Without honoring whores, we cannot truly understand and transcend the dynamics of violence, destruction, and ignorance fostered in our cunt-fearing society. The fact that some women are considered bad is a perpetually based value judgment that reinforces a fatal division between women. Many women allow our lives and sexual expression to be dictated by the threat of being perceived as a whore. Because of thinking like this, our society is brimming with women who have a hard time understanding, for instance, that whores can and are sexually assaulted. How, one might ask, can a woman who accepts money for sex be raped? Or perhaps, what does a woman who puts herself in that position expect? That's my favorite one. The fact that either question is considered at all plausible reflects the self-defeating ignorance we ourselves perpetuate. The measure of respect whores receive is in a direct proportion to the measure of respect that all women receive. Until there is one established, respected place for whores in this society, no women will have an establishment, respected foundation of power. I think that all women who aren't whores have a little bit to learn from whores. These women know what they're capable of. They know how to work what their mama and daddy gave them. And we judge them for maybe the most natural and respected profession the old world knew. We think that they're bad and they're gross for what they do, but if we look at it in a certain light, we all do the same thing. Whether it's for a house in the hills or, like I said, money for your kids to go to school. So, there is no circumventing this. Until there is a shift in consciousness about the potential of whores, we will continue to live in a society which offers no formally acknowledged teachers to awaken us to our power as sexual beings. Ain't no getting around this one either. The fact that whores are no longer exalted and respected is very much a reflection of our culture's collective sexual retardation and fear of women's innate sexual power. I aptly name Carol Queen as one of my personal prophet on the whoredom's future in our society. Carol Queen is absolutely amazing, and I recommend everyone research her. But for the sake of time, we're not going to talk about her now. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. So, I know that I went through some things really fast today. I hit on 3 big topics, but I really want you to rethink the way that you look at whores in our society. I wish I was a whore. I wish I knew how to tap into that sexual power that my body possesses, but unfortunately I can't. Maybe if I visited a whore, I would know how to. But the fact of the matter is, we don't respect whores. we don't trust whores. We think whores are dirty and crawling with STDs. But I think if you think about it, much like the way that a heroin addict is probably the cleanest person you could possibly know, I think the same goes for a whore. You know what you're getting yourself into, and you know the profession that you do, so you take precaution. Much like anything else, Mr. Bank Teller. You know, you keep the ink in the bag for when the robber comes to take your profession away from you. So I hope that this shed a little bit of light in a short amount of time on what it is to be a whore and why I wish I was one. Bye, guys.